Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Daily English Stories and Podcasts. I'm happy you're here with me again. Today, I want to take you outside, not into my home this time, but into the quiet streets of my city for a simple evening walk that turned into something more. The sun was setting when I left my apartment. The air was warm but soft, and the sky had that beautiful golden color that only appears for a few minutes each day. It was one of those evenings when the world feels both busy and peaceful at the same time. I didn't have a plan. I just wanted to walk, to stretch my legs, to breathe, to watch people finish their day. Sometimes walking helps me think more clearly, and sometimes it helps me stop thinking at all. The streets were full of small stories. A man was closing his flower shop, carefully moving the pots inside one by one. Children were chasing a ball near the corner, their laughter echoing through the narrow alley. A street vendor was packing up her cart, still humming an old song softly under her breath. Everything felt alive, but in a quiet, gentle way. I walked slowly past a row of shops, their glass windows reflecting the orange light of sunset. Inside one cafe, a young couple was laughing over their drinks. Next door, an old man was sitting alone by the window, reading a newspaper with a cup of black coffee beside him. There was something peaceful about that, the mix of noise and silence. Of stories that all shared the same space, but not the same direction. After a while, I reached the small park near the river. It wasn't crowded, just a few people walking their dogs, and a few cyclists passing by. The water reflected the sky, a mix of pink, orange, and soft blue. I stopped for a moment to watch. The breeze touched my face, carrying the smell of wet grass and food from nearby stalls. Somewhere, someone was grilling corn, and the scent made me smile. I hadn't eaten yet, but at that moment, I didn't feel hungry, just calm. I found an empty bench and sat down. In front of me, a small boy was feeding pigeons. He threw pieces of bread and they fluttered around him like a small cloud. His mother stood nearby, smiling quietly. It was such an ordinary scene, but it reminded me of my own childhood. When I was his age, I used to do the same thing, throw crumbs and watch the birds fight for them, laughing every time they flew too close. Funny how memories can hide for years and suddenly come back with something as simple as a sound or a smell. As the sun disappeared behind the buildings, the park began to change. The lights turned on, one by one, along the path, on the bridge, by the food stalls. The city's heartbeat slowed, but it didn't stop. People kept walking, but their steps became softer, their voices quieter. I decided to buy a cup of iced tea from a small cart nearby. The seller was an old woman with a wide smile. She poured the tea into a plastic cup and asked, "Long day?" I nodded and laughed. "Too long." She smiled and said, "Then this will help." It was just tea, but it tasted like kindness. I walked again, holding the cup in my hand. The air felt cooler now. Sound of traffic was fading, replaced by the sound of crickets and distant music from someone's speaker. A streetlight flickered above me, casting a warm glow on the wet pavement. I watched my reflection on the ground as I walked, thinking about how many evenings had looked like this. Different days, same feeling. Then, something funny happened. As I passed a bench, a small dog suddenly jumped in front of me, barking playfully. It wasn't angry, just excited. It wagged its tail and looked at me like it wanted to play. A young woman ran after it, laughing breathlessly. "I'm so sorry," she said. "He thinks everyone is his friend." I laughed too. The dog sniffed my shoe, then sat down like he'd known me forever. The woman tried to pull him back, but he refused to move. We both laughed harder. For a few minutes, we talked about dogs, about the weather, about how good the corn smelled nearby. She was friendly, the kind of person who made small talk feel easy. Before she left, she waved and said, "Have a good walk." And just like that, my quiet evening had turned into something unexpectedly cheerful. I kept walking until I reached the bridge. From there, I could see the whole city glowing. Streetlights, cars, reflections, dancing on the water. It was beautiful. I leaned against the railing and took a slow sip of my tea. The world felt big and small at the same time, busy but kind. I thought about how every evening is a little different. Some are lonely, some are peaceful, and some, like tonight, are filled with small surprises that make you smile without realizing. Maybe life is like that too. You can't plan it perfectly, but if you pay attention, you'll find joy in the smallest corners. The sky turned dark, and I decided to walk home. The streets were quieter now. The little shops had closed, the sound of the river faded, and the lights from motorbikes stretched across the road like ribbons. I walked slowly, feeling the cool air on my face, listening to the rhythm of my own steps. It wasn't silence, but it was peace. When I reached my door, I looked up at the night sky one more time. No stars tonight, just clouds. Still, it was beautiful, because beauty doesn't always need to shine. Sometimes it just needs to be there, quiet, simple, and real. Thank you for joining me on this evening walk. I hope it reminded you that even ordinary days can become special if you take the time to slow down and notice them. See you again next time for another story on Daily English Stories and Podcasts.